They always say change is good. But on that Monday morning as I sat across from the new boss I'd barely met with a weak cup of office coffee cooling in my hands, change felt like a knife in the back. His name was Logan. Logan Pierce. 30-some, expensive suit, gelled hair, the kind of man who spoke like a TED Talk but listened like a brick wall. It was his first day. Mine, my 3,214th, 10 years. 10 years of early mornings, late nights, skipped vacations, patched systems, and quiet successes. I didn't need applause. I needed respect. And now, with his lips curled into a corporate smirk, Logan was about to throw it all away before even learning how the coffee machine worked. He leaned back, stippling his fingers like he'd practiced this exact posture in front of a mirror. "Jenna," he began, voice smooth like a marketing pitch. "This isn't personal. We're just restructuring. Fresh faces, new energy. You understand, right?" I stared at him for a second, letting the silence settle. "Of course," I said, my voice even. "Thanks for the notice." His smile widened. He thought I was being professional, cooperative, maybe even grateful. But deep down I wasn't even angry yet. Not yet. I stood slowly, brushing non-existent dust from my blazer. My heart was pounding, but my face remained calm, polished, the version of me they had grown used to. Composed. Confident. Quiet. I knew every corner of this building, every weakness in its systems, every shortcut in its code, because I built them from the ground up. And he had no idea that the software he was about to gamble the company's future on, my software, wasn't theirs to command. The patent was in my name, filed years ago. Ironclad. I walked out of the office without another word, the door clicking softly behind me. The hallway felt longer than usual, fluorescent lights buzzing above me. My coworkers were glued to their screens, whispering, stealing glances. The news had spread like it always did in corporate buildings, not officially, but fast. Nobody met my eyes. No one ever does when loyalty becomes inconvenient. Back at my desk, I packed my things slowly. A photo of me and my brother from a hiking trip in Oregon. A coffee mug with a cracked handle. A small cactus I'd named Wallace that somehow survived 3 office moves. I moved deliberately, letting the routine ground me. My badge, my USB key, and finally my laptop. That's when the ache began to set in. Not anger, not sadness, but something heavier, betrayal. I had built that system during sleepless nights when the budget didn't allow for another engineer. I had documented every step, designed every patch, and made sure no one could manipulate it without the proper keys. My keys. I had warned the board years ago. Put my name on the software or I walk. They agreed. Signed the documents, filed the paperwork, then forgot. They always forget the woman behind the curtain until the curtain collapses. By the time I got home, the weight of the day began to settle. I changed into sweatpants, sat at my kitchen counter, and stared blankly at the blinking cursor on my laptop. But instead of tears, a slow, cold clarity washed over me. Logan Pierce had made a mistake. He thought he was cutting costs. He thought I was replaceable. He thought I was just an employee. What he didn't know was that the very foundation of Archer systems, the database infrastructure, the client dashboards, the custom logic trees that held every deal together, belonged to me. And in 5 days, I would make sure he knew it. Because the license? It had to be renewed every fiscal quarter. And Friday at midnight, it expired. I had 2 options. Renew it quietly and walk away with my pride, or let the software revert to restricted mode. A locked system. Inaccessible without my private key. No sabotage. No hacking. Just business. Their game, my rules. I sipped my tea slowly, my mind calculating every angle. If they wanted to save themselves, they'd have to crawl back. Not for my job, but for permission to keep the company running. A smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. The same kind Logan had worn this morning. Let's see how he liked it. Next Friday would be unforgettable. And I wouldn't even have to raise my voice. Tuesday morning arrived like any other, but the air in the office felt different. Too quiet. Too aware. I walked in through the front doors of Archer Systems like I had every day for the past decade. Nobody stopped me. Of course they didn't. HR hadn't processed anything yet. Paperwork takes time. Until then, I was still technically employed. Still expected to be professional. Still expected to smile. I did, but it wasn't the kind of smile they were used to. Logan's office door was closed. Probably busy adjusting his chair, hanging his degrees on the wall, pretending he understood the business he just inherited. He had no idea I was already preparing the slow collapse of his perfect little first week. 5 days. That's all they had left. I reached my desk, well, the desk I used to call mine, and found a young woman sitting there. Fresh out of grad school by the look of her wide eyes, nervous fingers. She stood up quickly when she saw me. "Oh, sorry. I didn't know you'd be coming in," she stammered. I smiled politely. "No worries. Transition period. I'm here to help." Her name was Emily. She'd been hired to replace me, though she didn't know the full story yet. She offered me a tight, embarrassed smile as I pulled a chair next to her and began explaining the system. I showed her the user interface, the codebase structure, and how the client dashboards worked. She asked good questions, smart, thoughtful, but I could tell it was overwhelming. The system was complex. Purposefully complex. Not out of spite, but out of necessity. Archer Systems managed hundreds of millions in client data. There were no shortcuts. Every corner of the architecture required precision, depth, experience, none of which Logan had, and none of which Emily could fake. As the hours passed, I kept my tone even, my manner calm. I wasn't cruel. I didn't want to sabotage her. She wasn't the problem. She was just a symptom of a deeper sickness in this industry, the assumption that value could be replaced, that experience could be downloaded like an update. But some things can't be replaced. Some people shouldn't be replaced. At noon, I went to the cafe across the street and sat by the window, my laptop open in front of me. I pulled up the original patent files, the ones I'd kept saved in encrypted cloud storage for years. I reread every line just to be sure. Everything was airtight. All rights, including derivative systems and extensions, remain the sole property of the original architect unless expressly transferred through a written and signed agreement. There was no such agreement. Archer Systems never thought they'd need one. That was their first mistake. I sipped my coffee slowly as I opened a second tab and began drafting the formal revocation notice. Calm. Legal. Effective. It wouldn't lock them out entirely. It would revert their systems to evaluation mode, restricted access, limited functionality. Just enough to paralyze them. Just enough to make them remember my name. I didn't send it yet. Not today. The timing had to be perfect. The license expired at 11:59 p.m. Friday. If I submitted the notice Friday at 6 a.m., it would trigger the automatic reversion by close of business, right when their biggest weekly report was due, right when clients logged in to access updated dashboards. The fallout would be instant and untraceable. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting toward the window. Across the street, I saw Logan stepping out of the building, phone pressed to his ear. He laughed at something, loud, confident, unaware. He had no clue the company he was leading was balanced on a wire, that the wire was mine, that I could cut it anytime. Back upstairs, Emily was waiting for me, trying to troubleshoot a minor bug in the analytics module. I guided her through it, watching her hands tremble slightly as she typed. "You okay?" I asked gently. She nodded. "Yeah, just a lot to take in. They told me the system was simple." I gave a short laugh. "They always do." She paused, looking at me. "Why are you helping me?" I met her eyes. "Because it's not your fault." That was the truth. I had no bitterness toward her. My war wasn't with the innocent. It was with the arrogant. With the people who thought power meant you could discard the very foundation of your success and still stand tall. By 5:30 p.m., I left the office with nothing in my hands but my phone. I didn't need to take anything with me. They were already standing on my work. The question wasn't if they'd fall. It was how loud the crash would be, and whether anyone would try to stop it before it was too late. By Wednesday, the air in the office had changed. It was subtle at first, whispers behind closed doors, longer than usual meetings, a flurry of emails with subject lines like urgent dashboard delay or client login timeout. I recognized the signs immediately. The system wasn't crashing yet, but it was starting to cough, stumble, like an engine that had been pushed too hard without ever being serviced. I knew exactly why. Emily approached me in the late morning, her brow furrowed, frustration written all over her face. She was holding a sticky note with hastily scribbled client IDs. "Jenna," she said, "3 different users are locked out of the analytics dashboard, and the system's throwing an authentication error when I try to reset their access." I followed the steps you showed me. She was doing her best. I could see that. She was smart, but the system wasn't built for beginners. It had layers, protections, conditional structures, that even experienced engineers had to unravel like puzzles. "I'll take a look," I said calmly, and together we sat at the desk. The problem wasn't in the code. It was in the license. The expiration had begun a soft countdown. Quiet but visible, if you knew where to look. A warning message embedded in the back-end logs, evaluation period ending in 2 days. Renew license or expect restricted access. The system was obeying its instructions perfectly. Everything was unfolding exactly as I designed it. And no one, certainly not Logan, had any idea what was coming. At 2 p.m., the office held its usual all-hands meeting in the glass conference room. Logan stood at the head of the table like a man who still believed he was in control. His tone was cheerful, but I could tell it was forced, too upbeat, too polished. "I just want to say I'm really proud of how everyone's adapting," he began, clasping his hands together. "I know transitions can be tough, but I'm confident that this team, especially with fresh talent like Emily, is moving in the right direction." There it was again. The casual dismissal of experience. The glorification of new blood, as if loyalty and knowledge were liabilities instead of assets. I said nothing. I just watched him. "Any questions before we wrap?" Logan asked, scanning the room. There was a brief pause. Then Anthony from IT raised his hand. "Yeah, actually, some clients have been experiencing login delays and reporting partial outages on their dashboards. We're looking into it, but it's been tough to trace." Logan didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. "Just growing pains," he said with a grin. "We'll sort it out." I nearly laughed out loud. That was his answer. Growing pains. No one said anything else. The meeting ended in awkward silence, with employees exchanging side glances as they returned to their desks. Anthony passed me on his way out and muttered under his breath, "It's getting worse." "I know," I replied softly. Back at my own station, I opened my terminal and ran a passive diagnostic, not to fix it, but to watch it. The system was still functional, but the errors were escalating. Minor things, refresh lag, API call failures, intermittent timeouts. But the real collapse would come Friday. These were just tremors before the quake. I could have warned them. I could have told Logan to check the license. But I didn't. I had warned them years ago. They chose to forget. They chose arrogance over respect. Now they could deal with the consequences. That evening, as I walked out of the building, I saw Logan in the lobby, talking animatedly to someone on the phone. His voice was tight now, tinged with frustration. Not panic yet, but tension. He glanced at me as I passed, giving a curt nod. I returned it with a blank expression. In his mind, I was still just a box to check. A courtesy. A relic of the old guard being phased out. He hadn't connected the dots. Not yet. At home, I lit a candle, made tea, and opened my laptop. The revocation letter was ready, sitting in draft. I read it over one more time. Per patent number 118543B, ownership of all proprietary systems and associated frameworks remains solely with the creator, effective immediately. Access is rescinded. All I had to do was click send. But not tonight. Tomorrow, the final day, would be the turning point. The cracks were visible, but they still didn't believe the building could fall. They would. Thursday felt like the moment right before a storm. Still. Heavy. Waiting. When I stepped into the office, the silence wasn't just awkward, it was brittle, as if the entire building knew something was wrong but didn't dare say it out loud. I walked past rows of desks where conversations were reduced to whispers, where monitors flashed with error screens, and support tickets piled up faster than IT could respond. I saw Anthony pacing by the server room, phone pressed to his ear. He looked up and gave me a grim nod. I didn't need to ask. I already knew. The system was unraveling. The first signs were subtle. The client dashboard refused to load for a handful of users in Europe. Then came the misfires, data exports timing out, notifications failing to send, the reporting engine choking on its own scripts. Every error was a symptom of the same underlying cause. The license was expiring. And by now, the system was loudly reminding them of it. Back at my temporary station, I logged in and quietly observed the logs. Warnings filled the screen. Alert, license status expiring in 14 hours. Warning, access to key modules will be restricted at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Error, licensing API authentication failed. Invalid renewal token. Still, no one had come to me. Not Logan, not HR, not even the board. They were scrambling behind closed doors, no doubt pointing fingers, trying to patch something they didn't understand. I imagine Logan sitting in his office, furiously Googling, software licensing crisis. While Emily quietly panicked under the pressure she never signed up for, it would have been almost funny, if it wasn't so predictable. By noon, the first escalation came through. One of our largest clients, a financial firm in Chicago, couldn't access their quarterly analytics dashboard. Their COO personally emailed Logan and CC'd 3 board members. Logan stormed out of his office a few minutes later, face red, tie loosened, voice strained. "Where's Jenna?" he barked. I stood calmly. "Right here." He approached fast, like a man who'd suddenly realized the fire he ignored had reached his front door. "Have you been seeing these issues? Why didn't anyone tell me this was happening?" I tilted my head. "People have been talking about it for 2 days. Anthony flagged it in the meeting yesterday." He blinked. For a moment, I saw it, the fear, a crack in the confident facade. "Can you fix it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice level. I paused, not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted the silence to settle. I wanted him to feel what it was like to wait for someone else's mercy. That depends, I said. On what? On whether you still think I'm replaceable. His mouth opened, then closed. No reply. I returned to my seat. I'll be here until the end of the day, as agreed. After that, I'm no longer under contract. Logan stood there a second longer before retreating to his office. The rest of the staff had heard everything. A few people stared. Most quickly looked away. But the balance had shifted, and they felt it. That evening, I left precisely at 5. No overtime. No courtesy. I walked past Logan's office without a glance. He was still there, slouched over his desk, shoulders hunched, staring at a screen filled with numbers he couldn't fix. At home, the sky outside my apartment was turning dark, streaked with red like the last breath of daylight. I brewed a cup of tea, sat at my desk, and opened the email draft one final time. No edits needed. I clicked send. The legal revocation letter was delivered to Archer Systems, its executive team, and their legal counsel. The subject line was simple: termination of software license, effective midnight. I exhaled. It was done. I didn't scream. I didn't celebrate. I simply shut my laptop and let the weight of 10 years roll off my shoulders. Tomorrow would be Friday. And everything they depended on would start slipping through their fingers. Not because I sabotaged anything, but because they let go of the one person who had been holding it all together. Friday, 6 a.m. My alarm went off, but I was already awake. I'd been up since 5, sipping coffee at my kitchen window, watching the city stretch into life below. On the surface, it looked like any other morning. But I knew better. I opened my inbox. A flood of replies had already come in overnight: legal inquiries, auto-generated server warnings, a failed attempt to renew the license. Too late. At exactly 11:59 p.m. the night before, Archer Systems' access to my software had officially expired. Not hacked. Not broken. Just revoked. Clean. Legal. Final. The moment they opened their eyes today, they'd step into a world without a working foundation. I took a long sip of coffee as I opened the remote monitoring panel, my quiet little backdoor view into the system's diagnostics. I didn't interfere. I simply watched. 7:32 a.m. System alert. Core modules offline. Error, authentication server not responding. Alert, analytics dashboard unavailable. Critical, client access denied. Invalid license. It had begun. By 8 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emily. I let it ring the first time. On the second, I answered. Jenna? Hey, it's happening. Everything's failing. Client login, dashboards, internal portals. Anani's losing it, and Logan he's panicking. Her voice was laced with fear, not for herself, but for the mess she'd walked into. Did you check the logs? I asked calmly. Yes, it says the license is invalid. But how can that? I revoked it, I said softly. Silence. But why didn't you tell anyone? I did, I replied. Just not recently. It was never their software, Emily. They just acted like it was. She didn't respond right away. Eventually, she whispered. Logan's going to freak. Sounds like he already has. I ended the call. 9:12 a.m. The news reached me before they could. System-wide failure hits Archer Systems. Clients unable to access financial platforms. Major outage in progress. By 9:30 a.m., my phone lit up again. This time, from a blocked number. I didn't need to guess. I answered. Jenna, Logan's voice was tight. Brittle. We have a situation. I know. The software, your software, shut down. Everything is failing. The client portals, the internal database, the reporting tools. The board is calling. Clients are threatening lawsuits. What the hell did you do? I didn't do anything, I said coolly. I just stopped doing everything for you. You can't be serious. We had a deal. You were supposed to finish the transition. You ended the deal. You ended it on your first day. A beat of silence, then softer. Look, we can figure this out. Just tell me what you want. I'll talk to the board. It's too late. No. Come on, Jenna. Be reasonable. Name your price. I almost laughed then. He wanted to negotiate, now that the walls were collapsing and the alarms were blaring. You don't get it, do you? I said. This isn't about money. You fired the person holding your company together. Now you're watching what happens when that person leaves. Please, he said. And it wasn't just panic anymore. It was desperation. I'm not coming back, Logan, I said quietly. I've already moved on. Maybe you should too. I hung up. And just like that, the weight I had carried for 10 years, every late night, every ignored idea, every board meeting where my name wasn't even mentioned, lifted. They were finally seeing what I had been all along. Essential. And they were seeing it too late. By noon, Archer Systems was trending on social media, for all the wrong reasons. Clients furious after massive Archer outage. Internal source confirms licensing failure. Company in chaos. Stock plummets 19% in morning trading. I refreshed my feed and watched the panic spread. Investors pulling out. Clients demanding answers. Former employees posting thinly veiled "I told you so" messages. And I did nothing. No interviews. No gloating. No retaliation. I didn't need to destroy them. They were doing that all on their own. By Friday evening, Archer Systems was in free fall. Their website had been reduced to a single error message. Support hotlines were flooded. News outlets circled like vultures. And inside their glass tower, executives scrambled to rewrite contracts, calm investors, and spin a story no one was buying. Meanwhile, I was sitting on my balcony, legs curled under me, watching the skyline flicker in the dusk. The noise, the chaos, the panic, it all felt so far away now, like watching a storm roll through a town you no longer lived in. My phone buzzed again. Logan. The 6th time that day. I let it go to voicemail, then played it back. Jenna, listen, the board, everyone's looking to me for answers and I don't have any. The software is locked. Legal says there's no way around it without your approval. The clients are threatening legal action. I know I screwed up. I was arrogant. I didn't ask questions. I didn't respect what you built. Please just call me back. His voice cracked slightly near the end. It wasn't the sound of a man in control anymore. It was the sound of a man who finally understood the cost of cutting corners. I didn't call him back. Because this story wasn't about Logan Pierce anymore. It was about me. About the 10 years I spent giving everything to a company that saw me as a line item. About the mornings I showed up early. The weekends I spent troubleshooting someone else's mistake. The ideas I shared in meetings, only to have someone else repeat them louder. And now they were left holding a hollow empire, gutted by their own carelessness. I opened my laptop one last time and checked my inbox. Offers, dozens of them. Tech firms, venture capitalists, startups, even a few competitors of Archer Systems who were now very, very interested in the woman who brought a multi-million-dollar company to its knees without raising her voice. But I wasn't looking for a job. I wasn't looking to build someone else's dream again. So I hit delete. Every offer. Every flattery-filled message. Every corporate pitch. Gone. I didn't need validation. I needed vision. The next morning, I walked into the offices of a small but well-connected venture group downtown. The founder was a woman I'd met years ago at a conference, someone who remembered my name when no one else did. She greeted me with a smile. "Jenna. Word travels fast." I smiled back. "So I've heard." We sat down in her sunlit corner office. She didn't waste time. "So, what do you want to build?" I told her. Not another bloated, top-down tech firm. No corporate rot. No faceless middle management. A lean, agile company that prioritized brilliance over bureaucracy. Where creators owned their work. Where engineers had a voice. Where respect wasn't a buzzword, it was built into the code. By the time I finished, she nodded once. "We'll fund it. Whatever you need." I shook her hand. And just like that, I wasn't the woman who'd been fired on a Monday anymore. I was the woman who wrote her own beginning. Back at home, I brewed a fresh cup of coffee and opened a clean document on my screen. I titled it Foundations. Not just a business plan, a blueprint for a new kind of company. One that didn't treat loyalty like a weakness. One that didn't assume quiet meant small. One that understood the real cost of overlooking the people who built the walls they leaned on. As I typed, my phone buzzed again. One final message from Logan. "Jenna. I resigned. Effective immediately. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen for a moment, then deleted the message without replying. It wasn't happiness I felt. It was something deeper, freedom. They had tried to erase me. But I hadn't disappeared. I evolved. I closed the laptop and stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched before me, open, alive, waiting. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And it tasted better than anything money could buy. Because the truth is, the best revenge isn't destroying what tried to bury you. It's becoming someone they can never reach again.